Kingdom Builder. I'm your host, Kelly Meade, and I'm so excited to be joined today by one of my favorite singer-songwriters who just released his first children's book based on his song Sparrows. Jason Gray, how are you today?
I'm doing pretty good. Thank you, Kelly. Always nice to see you. Um, your listeners may or may not be aware of this, but Kelly took her fandom and her friendship to the next level. I don't know, was it a year and a half ago? Is that what?
Yeah, thereabouts.
Maybe 2 years ago? Something like
No,
that.
it was last July.
It was last July. Okay, yeah. When I missed a flight to a show up there in the Northeast, but my bags didn't. So they were shipped ahead. But in order for me to make it to the venue on time, I actually had to change the airport that I was going to fly into because there wasn't a flight that would work into the original airport. But that meant I would fly to one airport, I think in Rochester. Is that where I flew into, or is that where my bags went to?
That's where your bags came.
My bags went into Rochester. I flew into I can't even remember where. Um, and so I uh I put the word out on social media, hey, is there anyone in the Rochester area who would be willing to pick up my bags for me, and I'll give them a free ticket to the show that night. And Kelly swooped in to save the day, brought my bags to me. I think I got there 10 minutes before the show was supposed to start. And there was my pedal board and everything I needed there. And I quick plugged everything in and I did the show. So thank you, Kelly. That was very generous of, I think it was a bit of a drive for you to do all that too.
Yeah,
So
that was about 3 hours, but it was worth it.
yeah. So yeah, it was a grand act of generosity. So thank you for that.
Well, like I've told you before, you're very welcome, and I was very glad to do it, and that meant a lot to me to be able to help you in that way as well. So I'm just glad that it worked out.
Yeah, it was great. So
Yeah, it's awesome to have you back on Kingdom Builder because I had you on as a guest when your album Land of the Living came out
okay.
last November.
Okay.
So it's great to have you back and talk
Good
about
to
the
be
new
back.
children's book,
Thank you.
Sparrows, which is based on your well-loved song by the same name. So, how did the idea for this book to happen come about?
Yeah, well, I've wanted to write a children's book for many, many years. Like since I wrote Remind Me Who I Am. I thought that would make a great children's book. And that was on my heart. And I was talking with my team about it and friends who had done that, like Dave and AJ Heller, they released a children's book, and there are other artists I know who have. And the overwhelming consensus I heard was, bro, you don't want to do it. Like it's so much more work than you'd imagine, and it's expensive, and so it's not really really profitable. So only do it if you're prepared to lose money and work really hard at losing money. And I was like, I still kind of want to do it. I think I'm supposed to do it. But it just was pushed to the back burner until a friend of mine who works at my record label, Centricity Music, um, his name is Corey. Cool story about him. Uh, in the early days of my music ministry, when I was up in Minnesota, and I released my first independent record, and was playing to tens of people in coffee shops, ones of people. Sometimes one of the shows I played to four people, including um, th three of whom were my wife and two kids, and the other guy left halfway through. That's a true story. Um, but anyway, back in the early days, Corey Henkel was a fan. And he was a youth pastor up in Minneapolis, and he wrote his first fan letter to an artist to me. as an email, and so he was a super fan, and then just our paths crossed a number of times over the years. And this is how much of a stalker he is. He left youth ministry, moved to Nashville, got a job at my record label, and now I answer to him. That's crazy, right? That's creepy. Corey Henkel, creepy guy. That's really creepy. Anyway, he's uh he's also just awesome. I love him. And so he works at the label, and they are developing their their book their book publishing arm. And I should also include here, for anyone who's hearing me for the first time, I do have a speech handicap. So it's because of stalkers like Corey Henkel. They just make me nervous. Right now, I'm joking. I do have a speech handicap though. But anyway, so he came to me saying, "Hey, we'd like to experiment with making a children's book based on one of your songs." I'm like, "Oh, you don't say." Like this has been on my mind for years, and so I threw out the three songs that I thought would best serve that, and hopefully I get to do the other two. I would really like to do that, so we'll see how this one does. Um, if they're still interested in doing more. I think it's doing well though. I think everyone's excited about it. So, but we landed on doing a book around the song Sparrows. And interestingly, here's a little inside baseball that you may find interesting. I don't know if this is interesting to the other listeners, but my initial idea for the book. So because I have a speech handicap, I'm always meeting parents on the road who bring their child along with them who has a speech handicap, and they want them to meet me, and be assured that they aren't alone and that it doesn't have to define their lives. And I've met some wonderful people over the years. It's been a great gift to me. One young man I met, I'm gonna say he was like 11 years old, and it was in California. After a show, I got to meet him and his dad, and he was very shy, but his dad was talking about him, and about how hard it had been for him to have a speech handicap, but he's a great kid. His teachers love him. They just think he's one of the best students they've ever had, and they tell me all the time about how he, if if a you know if a classmate is being teased, he steps in to stop that from happening. Or if someone is kind of outside the group, he always draws them in. And I got down on my knee and I said, "Hey man, like I'm hearing all these wonderful things about you and this beautiful empathetic heart that you have. And I just want you to know I'm not surprised one bit, because I bet your speech handicap has been very painful for you at times and has made you feel alone. And I bet you've been teased about it at times." And he nods, that goes. "And what's beautiful is rather than becoming resentful and bullying people back and becoming hard-hearted, you've allowed it to make your heart more tender, and it's made you aware of other people who suffer the way that you do. And then that's why you make sure they're included and you defend them, and that's a beautiful thing that you know your speech handicap has made of you. You've allowed the Lord to use it to make something beautiful in your life." And that was very meaningful. And I thought, this could be the book. That'd be so cool, right? Like just a story about a boy who has those experiences, but he's down on himself about his speech handicap. And then his dad brings him to a concert and he hears the guy on stage. He's got a speech handicap too. And he gets to meet him, talk with him afterwards, and it gives him a sense of peace. I really loved the idea of turning that into a book. That'd be so meaningful because it's true. The only problem is is it made me look like the hero, and you don't want to be the hero of your own stories, right? Like, and then he goes to a Jason Gray concert, and Jason Gray talks with him and imparts this peace to him and stuff. And I'm like, that doesn't feel quite right, and that's a problem. And so we tried to work with it a little bit and then decided maybe it was better to pivot from that. But I grieve that we didn't get to tell that story because it's cool. But I like the story that we told too, um, a lot actually. So and and there are a lot of autobiographical elements um, in the story from my life. So including, would you like to hear one?
Sure, why not?
Okay. I'm talking a lot. I wanted to give a break in case you're like, no, no, no. I want to ask you about something else, Jason. Um, so, you know, in the story, it's a story about Ellie, who is bullied by her anxiety and also a classmate at school, Annabelle, who teases her about her speech handicap. And then she hears a sermon um, about how God watches over the sparrows, and if his eye is on the sparrow, you can rest assured he's got his eye on you and he cares very, very much. And that gives her the tools that she needs to confront the bullies in her life. Um, one of them being Annabelle, and things turn around in that relationship and they become friends. Sorry if I spoiled the ending for people who haven't read the book yet. Um, but when I was in middle school, there was a kid, he'd flunked, and so he was older and bigger than all of us. And he was mean. He had a pretty rough home life, but he was mean. He was a bully. And it was a small school. There were only 8 people in my class. And anyway, one recess, he's picking on my best friend, and I I step in to help my friend, and the playground attendant sees us roughhousing a little bit, blows the whistle, sends us to the um, sends me and the bully, Robert, to the principal's office. And on the way there, now I have a good relationship with the principal. He really likes me. We connect all the time over over Sherlock Holmes. We both love Sherlock Holmes, so we'll stop each other in the hallway and, oh, what'd you think of the Hound of the Baskervilles? And I love that one. So we would always connect over that. So I knew I was gonna be fine. He really liked me. Robert, it was not gonna go well for him. I knew that too. But we're on our way to the principal's office, and I basically said, "Hey, let me do the talking. I think I can get us out of this." "Oh, okay." And he grunts, and we go in there and I talk our way out of it, and we leave the office. And Robert and I had an understanding from that day on. I wouldn't say that we became best buds, but he never picked on me or my friend again. And he kind of respected me. He knew that I did him a favor and that there was no reason why I ought to have, because he was being a jerk. So another thing about him, he always used to say, like he'd push us around and say, "I'll give you the first 2 punches. You can have the first 2 punches." And I was always like, "Well, I'm just gonna punch him once then." But he wouldn't have. I don't think he would have honored that. I think he would have came after me if I just punched him once. So that never happened. It's probably good that that didn't happen. Anyway, so that autobiographical element um, echoes into the story a little bit. So
Yeah, I think it's really cool how you can use parts of your own story and like, craft it in a way to help others. And even though Sparrows is written, it's geared more towards kids, but like I said, I really enjoyed reading it. And I think there's something in it for people of all ages because I think in one way or another, we've all been there at some point,
Yeah.
either as the person being bullied or mistreated, or maybe even doing the bullying. So I think that the story, even though it's based on sparrows, it also echoes another one of your songs a little bit, Be Kind, where
Yeah.
you get to
Yeah.
learn about being compassionate and having the empathy towards people and taking the time to get to know their story a little bit more and understand like maybe where they're coming from and why they're acting that way. So I just thought that was a really cool little element that was an addition to the story.
I love that you caught that. Yeah. And my song "Be Kind" is inspired by the quote from Ian McLaren, a Scottish preacher from the 1890s, who said, "Be kind, because everyone you meet is in a hard battle." And that idea comes to life in the book too, you know. So yeah. Yeah, like it's a book about uh what to do with our anxiety when we're bullied by it. But then it's also a book about having, you know, we learn that Annabelle, the way that she's acting out, has to do with her own anxiety, right? And so how to be gentle with the anxiety of other people. There's a quote I love. Uh, Keith Gilbert, I think is his name, if I remember right. He says, "The way to love somebody is to run your finger along the surface of their soul, and when you find a crack, pour love into it." And I think we see our main character, our hero, the protagonist, Ellie, when she discovers the crack in her adversary's soul, she pours love into it and it changes things, you know? So,
Yeah, that's really beautiful to think of it in that way. So you've written so many songs over the years, and you definitely have a gift of being able to convey the emotion and kind of speak into the human condition with the way that you write. So how do you feel your approach to writing the book differs from your songwriting?
oh, great. Great question. It's a different language, you know. I think I'm working on another book. Actually, I'm working on three other books at the same time. One of them is a memoir of my faith journey. Another one is a book of devotional essays for all of my songs I've ever released. Each of those require a different kind of language too, right? You know, um, and a children's book is very much its own language. Music writing is its own language. What was interesting to me um, is as a songwriter and as a book writer, you learn that there are certain words that you avoid because they're just kind of they're weak. They're filler words. They don't really move the ball down the field. They're like um, when we're in a conversation and we say a lot and like, you know, there are words that are like that. And a couple of those words are actually, this is actually true. It's stronger if you just say, this is true, right? Like the actually isn't helping, you know. Another one is very, this is very hot coffee. It's stronger if you just say, this is hot coffee, you know. Um, so I've just learned to kind of uh, watch for those words like a hawk and eliminate them when I'm writing. Um, I got to collaborate with an amazing children's author named Jess Waller. Jess Waller. And I learned a lot from her. And she used language that I would not use because I've been so trained in these other uh, modes of writing. So that in the story, you know, where it says, and he cares very, very much. She was very twice. What? You know, like I was like, we can't do that. And I just noticed that in the language of a children's book, those words feel very comforting, like a warm hug almost. He cares very, very much. You know, it's so sweet and assuring. So I would not have written the book the way that it is without without her um, generous involvement. Um, just because I I'm not as versed in that language, you know. So she was great to work with. I loved working with her. And then there's the visual language of the illustrations. I also got to work with a great illustrator, Hilary Griffith, and her stuff is great. I mean, look at this. Hold on a second. I'm going to show you my favorite illustration, and you're ready. Oh my gosh. Look at that minestrone soup. That looks real. Look at that. That's amazing. I love that illustration. But there's all kinds of wonderful things that she communicated um, visually, like that each time Annabelle is in her anxiety, it's like a dark cloud, you know, um, a dark cloud of worry, and it's like clouding her mind, you know. And then when when she all of a sudden comes to a place of peace, you can see the dark cloudiness kind of dispels, and it's just lit up, you know. One of the other things that I think is super cool is that on every spread, in every spread, somewhere in the spread is a picture of a sparrow. So it's kind of like a little Easter egg hunt, you know. And what I think is meaningful about that is that it's a reminder that that peace, it's always in the frame, like it's always available to us. It's always in the picture if we can recognize it and if we can give our attention to it, you know. So I love that. I almost think that that's almost the most meaningful story happening in the book. And I didn't have my, you know, and that was all the illustrator, you know. It's beautiful. So like here, I love this. Where's the where's the sparrow here? Oh, the bedposts. The bedposts have a little, look at that. So I think that's really delightful and meaningful, and very grateful I got to work with them. Um, a part of me, I'd like to do 3 books because I learned a lot this time working with Jess Wohler. And I'd probably be interested in working with her again on a second one. And then hopefully by then I will have learned enough from her where I want to do the third one on my own. So that's what I think right now. We'll see though. I've got 3 other books I got to finish first.
Yeah, I love that though. I love getting to see how creativity can come together when you collaborate with others who have different strengths.
Yeah.
And it's just so cool the way that, like, being a creative person myself and the way that our ideas can come to life through whether it's music or writing stories or painting or other artwork. It's just so neat to be able to see it in all these different mediums and how it gets out there and
Yeah.
how God can work through it in other people's lives as well. So it's been really cool to get to see your creativity coming into a different outlet as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. You know, my friend Andrew Peterson always inspires me. His creative output is so so potent, and it's so him, like he's written um, memoir type books, but he's also written these young adult fantasy novels, and his grasp of the different genres he creates in is it's beautiful and inspiring, so
Yeah, I love that. And as you mentioned, you're also working on the devotional for
yeah,
and I believe you mentioned that it's like one devotional for each song that you've recorded. So I'm really excited about that one too. And
yeah.
now that you've shared like you have a memoir in the works as well, that's going to be really interesting. So lots to look forward to.
I'm very close on the devotional essays, and it's interesting. Most devotionals I've been exposed to, they um, they kind of land on a very direct point for you to take something away. They're maybe a bit preachy at times. I don't even mean that like in a negative way, but I can't find another word. But I was reading an excerpt from a Frederick Buechner book last night. I actually just posted about it on my social media. But he says here, hold on a second. I can find it. And this will be worth our time, I think. Hold on, I'm almost there. Yeah, here it is. He says, and Frederick Buechner is my favorite author. T- uh, um, Pastor Pastor Tim Keller talks about how he read so much of the work of C.S. Lewis that, in a way, he kind of had the mind of Lewis in him. And I would say that there is a way in which that I kind of have the mind of Buechner in me, in terms of his writing really trained me in the way that I see the world, and so I can look at things and have a sense of how Buechner would see it. But he wrote, about 10 years ago, I gave a set of lectures at Harvard in which I made the observation that all theology, like all fiction, is at its heart autobiography. And that what a theologian is doing essentially is examining as honestly as he can the rough and tumble of his own experience with all its ups and downs, its mysteries and loose ends, and expressing in logical, abstract terms the truths about human life and about God that he believes he has found implicit there. More as a novelist than as a theologian. More, and uh, and then he goes on to speak about how a lot of his writing, he wasn't trying to direct the reader to a certain point as much as he was just trying to convey his experience as truthfully and humanly as he knew how, trusting that in that would be something for the reader. Um, and that is more the way that I'm inclined to write. I think sometimes I'm insecure that the evangelical Christian audience wants something a little more definite and directed. But the uh, the writing that moves me the most is where it's not explicitly clear what the author is trying to get me to conclude, and it's more just kind of laid out. And there's something about that leaves room for the Holy Spirit to speak whatever I actually to speak whatever the Holy Spirit wants me to hear in that story. And so writing the devotional essays has been interesting. Like I'm trying to do that. And at the same time, I think the audience would like at least some moments where there's a clear landing place, like, and this is the point, I'm making. So um, throughout the book, I'm trying to do a dance between serving the reader in those two ways. Anyway.
Yeah, I love that because I think that really points out in a way of how God created us all as individuals. We all have different ways of
Mhm.
learning and understanding and exploring the, like depths of truth and everything that we want to, the way that we just want to, I guess, just the way that he works through our understanding, whether it be through music, through books, through conversations that we have. Like you're saying, how when there's not necessarily a defined, like, here's what you need to know, go
Yeah.
for it. This is the only truth. This is the, this is the key takeaway.
Right.
But then it opens it up to let you and your conversations with God, your just the way that you understand and learn things.
Yeah.
Because like I said, we're all different in that way. It leaves it open to where it can even mean more to us because
Right.
it touches us in our own individual way. So it's really cool to be able to work that into your writing as well.
Yeah. I don't know how successful I am at all that, but that's on my mind for sure. Like writing things that I hope will create an opportunity for people to ponder more than, oh, here's the thing I'm supposed to think about that. So, yeah. And what's interesting too is you know, some of these songs are from like 15 years ago or and or more. And so I go back to write a devotional essay about some of those earliest songs, and it's like, oh, yeah, that's not exactly how I believe that today, the way that I did then, and that's interesting. And I think that's a sign of growth, right? Like, hopefully, I don't believe things the same way I did 20 years ago. Um, and Yeah, so all like it's been a way of tracking my growth, I suppose. But having to create a devotional reflection based on something I wrote 20 years ago is interesting too. Yeah.
I think that gives us kind of, I know that happens with me. Like I'll listen to a song. It's happened
Yeah.
with some of your songs too, where I've gone back and like re-listened to them and I'm like, oh, this means something completely different to me now than it did when I first listened to it. Or maybe I didn't give it very much thought at the time because I hadn't experienced certain things yet, or I hadn't been through more difficulties or grown in
Yeah.
my faith as much. But then I can go back and be like, ooh, yeah, this one hits a lot differently now.
Yeah.
So
One
that's
of
got to
the
be really cool.
yeah, one of the highest compliments I ever got was from a radio guy who he came to me. Uh, he stopped me. We were at this big gathering of radio people, and he said, I didn't know what to think of you for the longest time, and I wasn't sure if I liked your songs, and then I went through a brutal divorce, and I went through a lot of pain, and all of a sudden I felt like, oh, I get it now, and I want to thank you. That was that was very meaningful. Um, I do like I've got a song called "Learning to Be Found," and the lyric in it is hold on a second, let me rather than fumbling through, let's see if I can find it quick. "Learning to Be Found," Jason Gray lyrics. There we go. We'll find it. Yeah, here it is. Um, I had to Google it. Uh, it says, oh, sorry, there's an ad that popped up. There we go. If you knew my story, oh, you might not want to listen to my song. I wouldn't blame you, but I'll be here waiting when you need to sing along. And that's where that lyric came from, you know. So,
Mhm. Yeah, I really that's one of the songs that I have, like I was mentioning, how you go back and you can kind of just find another layer to them. So that's definitely one of them. And now that we've kind of shifted gears into music a little bit, you
yeah,
had a new song this year called Awestruck,
yeah,
which was a part of a really cool concept album called A New Heaven and a New Earth that you
yeah,
collaborated with several fellow artists. So
yeah,
you also had some great experiences that were kind of unique for this project through them.
yeah.
So, what can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. Uh, I've somebody who's, heading up the project reached out to me. Was it right before COVID or during COVID? I can't remember now. Asking me if I'd want to be involved in a project exploring the idea of what a Christian ethic around creation care is. And the two things I thought was, I don't want to get involved because that seems like a very political issue. But as I thought about it more, I thought, well, but there is something in there for us that, there is a way that maybe I should be thinking about that Christianly. And uh, my level of engagement with all of that was basically just when I was at the airport and I will have eaten something and I go to the bins and oh, which bin do I put this in? And there are little pictures by the bins of, oh, if you have a cup, it goes in here. And if it's, and it's like, none of the pictures match what I'm holding. I don't know where this goes. Okay, I'll just throw it in the trash. So that was my level of engagement with um, caring for creation. And so I thought, uh, if if I do this, I bet there's something in it for me to learn. I think about um, years ago, I bought a minivan, and it was this kind of dark olive green that I thought was a cool, like I don't see any other vehicles this color. This is cool and unique. I'm gonna get this van. And I got it and I drove it off the lot and I started noticing cars everywhere were the same color. I just hadn't noticed it until I had one, right? And so there's a thing that happens that when we in engage with something, it just changes the way we see the world, right? And so I thought if I engage with this, it's just going to open up. I'm just going to begin to recognize things that I'm blind to right now because it's going to tune me in. And and maybe by being involved in this project, it could do that for listeners too. Like if it just raises our awareness where we just kind of tune in. And then if you're tuned in, there's an opportunity for the Holy Spirit to speak, right? So I thought, I think I could be involved in this and not be dragged into the ideological or political morass that so often dominates the conversation around these things. And that's exactly what's happened. It's been very positive. Um, I wrote the song. I I had written a verse or two of Awestruck, so I kind of had that song in the works. And I was reading a book about healing from traumatic heartbreak. And one of the things I learned in it was that a lot of trauma treatment programs involve something where it gets the patient outdoors, like hiking, because there's something about the beauty of nature that heals us. And I just thought that was so interesting, like that means that that God has created us with this capacity for awe and uh, being healed by beauty, and the medicine is everywhere. And if if we could see the world in that way, maybe that would change the maybe we'd be more intentional about the beauty of nature, you know. And there is something, I'm sure you've experienced this, right? Like when you stand before an ocean or a big body of water or in a forest or in the Rockies, there's something about it that makes me feel small and insignificant, while at the same time it also makes me feel seen. Like it all of a sudden puts me in an intimate conversation with God. That's weird, isn't it? It makes me feel small and insignificant and seen and known at the same time. I don't understand why that would happen, but it is magical, you know. And and another paradox I experience in me is that when I'm surrounded by natural beauty, I was recently at the Grand Canyon, and it makes me feel it makes me feel homesick, like a longing, you know, for like like a sense of almost like I'm not I'm not home yet, but also a sense of like, yeah, but I'm right where I'm supposed to be. Like, you know, I may not be home yet, but I'm well on my way in this moment, you know. So, so that's what that song is about how the beauty of the world around us can create that, like open things up in us, uh, our capacity for awe, where we are met, where we meet with God. And I thought if I could write a song like that, my first mentor, he said once, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink it. But you can if you mix a little salt in the oats, right? You can make them thirsty. And so I thought rather than writing a song that was a preachment about you, you need to take care of creation around you. Instead, if I could write something that made the listener feel this is precious, then the work is already done, right? So
Yeah, and like I mean nature for me, that's always been a place where I've felt closer to God, just getting to
mhm.
see like just the beauty and as you're saying how you can feel small but also at the same time
Mhm.
seen.
Yeah,
And that's the way that I feel when I'm like in the middle of the woods and I look up at the tall trees all
mhm.
around and like one of my favorite spots on one of the local trails here, it's just like that and the trees like especially when they don't have their leaves, you can just look
Yeah,
up and they're just reaching towards the sky and it's like, "Oh my gosh, I feel like at this it's like you feel like you said you feel small and kind of insignificant but at the same time it's like wow this is so cool that I get to see this and
yeah,
it's just kind of a peace that comes over me so I
it's
totally
interesting,
get
isn't it?
that
Yeah.
and it's always been I'm such a nature nerd it's like it's always been a big thing for me too so that's part of why I think Awestruck is so cool and
Mm.
the whole album and also the whole concept of it
Yeah,
because I think God did create nature, as you're saying, to and the world around us. It has everything we need to feel comforted and healed.
yeah,
And also, we are supposed to take care of it because He told us that in Genesis, even. You know, we've given you, or I've created this for you to, you know, tend and take care of and to grow things and to
yeah,
nourish yourself.
yeah,
So, yeah, I think that's totally not too far off to be into having that conversation from a Christian perspective
yeah,
and without having to get pulled into, as you're saying, all of the more negative things that get blown out of proportion. So,
yeah, yeah, yeah. So I've been happy to be a part of that, and it's opened the doors to some good adventures, you know. Um, I got to go over to Rome with the other artists who were on it, and we got to sing for the Pope, and you know, I didn't have that on my bucket list, you know, and that was interesting, you know. So
And I know that that video can be found on YouTube. If people search for A New Heaven and a New Earth, they
Oh,
can
okay.
find that little mini documentary type
Oh,
video on there. So it's
I haven't
pretty
even
cool to
seen
watch. Yep, it's on there.
it. Am I cool in it? Hopefully
Yeah,
I'm.
I think so.
I hope so. You never know. You never know when the camera's rolling, right? But,
So you've had a really full year this year with the music and writing and also touring, but you're not done yet because you still have the Christmas tour coming up with Point of Grace, as well
yeah,
as some of your own Christmas stories tour
yeah.
shows. So that's got to be really exciting to have those to look forward to. Is there anything else coming up that you can share, like for the end of this year or even looking into next year?
Yeah, with the project of the devotional essays book, well, and the release of the Sparrows book too, um, we thought, wow, wouldn't it be interesting if we recorded like a an acoustic version of Sparrows that was stripped back, maybe felt a little bit like a lullaby, you know. And I started working on that, and that has grown into, oh, what if we did like an acoustic versions greatest hits record, you know, like you know, and favorites, and just reinvent them in an acoustic way, and that's been so fun. I've been working on that with my son Kipper, who's a brilliant producer. So we just got done 2 songs. This is probably weird, but I'll do it anyway. Like Sparrows. Um, like one of the things, and this was his idea, is brilliant. Um, is like I had the guitar, and I laid it flat in my lap, and he had me just kind of do it, and we recorded that, and that became the rhythmic track for it, you know. And so, okay, well, how do we make an acoustic album that, you know, where the songs feel like more than just, oh, I'm just going to play it acoustic, but is all centered around the acoustic guitar and other acoustic instruments, you know. And we're working on that, and it's a lot of fun. Uh, it's more about how do we make this emotional and delightful, as opposed to how do we make a radio single that is slamming and there's all kinds of stuff happening, you know, because the songs have already been a hit, you know, so we don't have to worry about that. And it's super fun, like playing in that sandbox with Kipper too. He's brilliant, and yeah, it's great.
Yeah, I love hearing you guys working together. I remember the Kipper Gray Sessions EP that
Yeah.
came out a few years back that has some of my favorite songs on it. So it's
Really?
really, yeah, I love Be Your Own Kind of Beautiful, and Becoming was on there, and I think Love Life was on that one
Love
too.
Life is on there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you
so
so
that's going
much.
to be very awesome to get to hear new versions of some favorite songs.
Yeah.
Can't wait for that. Looking forward to more information when that is ready to go. So
Yeah.
yeah, I want to encourage everyone to visit jasongraymusic.com, check out the tour dates, and can check out where to order your own copy of the new children's book, Sparrows. Also follow Jason on all social media platforms, which I will link in the description below this video,
Thank you.
and keep up with everything else he has coming up. Jason, thank you so much for joining me today. This has been awesome.
Ball and chain, stop dragging me round.